Morning, colleagues. Welcome to our webinar. Let's give colleagues until 9:05 to join, and then we'll start. Thank you. Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to our industry webinar entitled ECTD Specification 3.0 Launch Follow-up. Some house rules before we begin. All participants will be muted during the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please pop them in the Q&A platform. My name is Pratibha Sobran, and I'm the Senior Manager for Health Products Authorization at SAHPRA. Today, I am accompanied by Shital Mora, who will be monitoring the Q&A platform. So some background on this webinar. The new Regulatory Information Management System has gone live in April 2024. This makes the system about 3 months old. There are many lessons learned on submissions and trigger files. And today, SAHPRA would like to take this opportunity to discuss best practice and to clarify expectations going forward as we evolve in our digitization processes. Today's expected outcomes are as follows: to discuss common validation issues, including matrices, timelines, and the DVP. I am joined by Mrs. Don Libitsa, who is the Senior Business Process Consultant at Vector Life Sciences. Don is a pharmaceutical scientist with 20 years of experience in the pharma industry. She is experienced in implementing RIM solutions in industry and recently as the project manager for SAHPRA, where she is involved in reviewing the ECTD specifications and implementing DocuBridge. I am also joined by Dr. Madeleine Tablanche, who is the Senior Operations Consultant at Vector Life Sciences. Madeleine has over 10 years' experience in regulatory affairs, with expertise in compilation of ECTD submissions and understanding the technical aspects, as well as the combined scientific knowledge associated with pharmaceutical submissions. So welcome to Don and Madeleine. Together, we have been working on the back end of submissions being received from applicants. Please, can you take us through some of the common challenges or issues that are being experienced? Over to you, Madeleine and Don.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Madeleine Blanche. I will be first on the word. Thank you, Patiba, for that very nice introduction. I know there's a lot of people that has way more experience. However, I do pride myself that I absolutely love the technical part, and that's where my expertise lies as well. So today, I'll start off with the common validation issues, the do's and don'ts, and we did make it a bit of a please do this, don't do that situation that it's highlighted and it stands out that you can remember the moment you do a trigger file or do some FTP uploads that you remember, please do this, don't do that. Why we are doing this is because SAHPRA gets flooded with a lot of mails. I don't understand what went wrong. And meanwhile, it's a basic thing like you did not do the correct naming convention as was communicated by SAHPRA. So let me kick this off. So agenda is the ECTD Spec 3.1 and then some general comments. We will start with the trigger file issues, do's and don'ts, some validation issues that we picked up that applicants are asking about, some FTP uploads issues, and then at the end, Pratibha will take us some DVP and timelines. So just on that note, recently, I think about a week ago, the ECTD Specification 3.1 was sent out for comment. So please go read it. We've included some descriptions on the clones, the replicas, the rolling reviews. There was a schema update. So for the more technical and for software vendors, there was a schema update. So please refer to the util folder, and that is also available on the ECTD website. And there is also an inclusion of different approaches to baseline and a few, there were some typographical things we adjusted, but the main things is the inclusion of the baselines, the descriptions of the clones, replicas, and etc. But just on general, previously we had a webinar, and I think this was webinar 3, where we had a few discussion points, and we are actually going to revisit this because we are still having the same issues when applicants submit these applications. So the first of all, the application for the name. It was stated to kindly use just the application number to name the application folder and use the application number for the first strings only. So no dash, no comma, no nothing. So we still get that BAU, the old FTP naming convention. Please note that is not relevant anymore. You should just use the application number of the first strings or your master strings only. Then we have the XML trigger file. There are still some trigger files that comes in with a lot of interesting situations. So the mandatory fields are absolutely mandatory, but we'll go into that because we implemented a validation on the trigger file, which will make this a lot easier and a lot more user-friendly going forward, and to ensure information is provided. Then the FTP server, we also stated that the validation reports are no longer required to be uploaded to the FTP. You can really leave it in the folder on your PC. You don't have to submit it, but it should be available upon request. And you also don't have to provide the signed MD5 checksum. The signed MD5 checksums was actually relevant to paper copies that was submitted in collaboration with an electronic copy. So therefore, this is actually really no longer required. You can really leave it out at this point. And just on that note, so SAHPRA in the last three months with implementation of RIMS, they really assisted in helping applicants to fix mistakes, stuff like incorrect naming conventions, trigger file issues, validation issues. So from this point forward, because we have this webinar today, they will no longer be correcting any mistakes by applicants and will not be answering any more queries on validation errors or trigger file issues. Please refer to your ECTD software provider for support on these. Okay, so on that note, so trigger files will now be validated, and that will start from Monday, 22 July, so that's next week, Monday. And together with that, your application will now stay on the FTP and not be removed. However, trigger files will be renamed after the validation to either state the sequence number, ready.xml or /xml, or sequence number invalid trigger file it's .xml. So on that note, if you have something that stated this sequence number invalid trigger file, it means it's not going to be processed by SAHPRA, it won't go through validation, it won't be imported into their system. That means you as applicants need to correct your trigger file. And we'll go through how to check your trigger file and how to fix any mistakes there are. If it's this XML or the sequence number ready XML, this one you will actually not see because it's actually going to disappear. This is what the automator is going to take up. So if you don't have your trigger file in your folder anymore, you should in the next few minutes receive your validation report via email. So, and this is what my next point states. If they were valid, it will be taken by automator and this will disappear from your application folder on your FTP. So, and therefore you should receive your ECTD validation report via email. So what does that mean? So first of all, we will still have the ERR folder. So any incorrect naming convention or funny folders will go into the ERR folder, like that one with the BAU, the V, the VC will go into ERR folder, or anything with a dash will go into the ERR folder. So you as applicant need to go monitor your FTP to make sure if anything is in the ERR folder, something's up. And please go fix your error. SAHPRA is not going to assist you in fixing those errors. And then on bird's eye view, I have 3 applications. That is actually correct. But what happens now? So my first one is the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That one is actually how you should submit on the FTP. So you would see this test area is where the applicant's name will state, or this is where your FTP, it might say root. And then you have your application folder. And in your application folder, you would submit your sequence working documents, as well as the trigger files. And you still name it as envelope.xml. Remember, the validation looks for an envelope document to validate, and thereafter it will be renamed to ready or invalid trigger file. My next one happened to be incorrect invalid trigger files. So after validation, when I opened the application 027712, I saw that my 2 trigger files were incorrect. And then I'm going to explore what went wrong in those 2 trigger files. Then my last one happened to be, oh, they were actually correct, and it went to ready. So what will happen with these? Is this what it will look like on the applicant side after it was taken up by automator. So if you don't see the ready, don't be concerned. It's taken by automator and it will be validated by the system. So the next step would be validation, and then you will receive your email. So what do I check? So I need to monitor my FTP. So I need to check the ERR folder. I need to fix folder naming conventions because that's what would be available in the ERR folder. And after I've fixed it, I can move it back to the main root folder. I should check each application in the root folder to make sure if I have an invalid trigger file, I should fix it. And then I can only re-upload the trigger file in the application folder. You don't have to re-upload your sequences. They are already on the FTP, but you should re-upload your fixed trigger file into that space. Then if I have a valid trigger file, it will no longer be in a folder, and therefore I should receive my automated email. And now the question would be, what if I don't receive an email? So there's two things that we picked up. Mainly, the email addresses are incorrect. There's a typo error, and then people are like, I'm not receiving my email, and I need it for proof of submission to my company. Please ensure that you do not have typos in your email address, because that will result in not receiving. Automator is not smart enough to, how can I say, sync out the email address where it should go to. It looks for what is specifically typed in the trigger file. And then you should also check with your internal IT to ensure the email address is whitelisted. Remember, it is an automated email. Some companies' IT policy states that automated emails get blocked. So please check with your internal IT to ensure you get your email. Thereafter, if there's then an issue, then you can contact us to make sure that we can explore what the issues are. And then what will be validated in the trigger file? So first of all, it's looking for version 2 of the trigger file. Please, I can't ask enough, please submit with version 2 of the trigger file. It is available on the website. We'll go through it in a few minutes. It is very important because there were some submission type updates as well as the contact email, which had a bit of an issue on it. Then there is validity of content. Is it valid content? Didn't you use any invalid characters? Then is the required fields included, like, for example, the application number and etc. And then opening and closing statements. And then after, only correctly named trigger files will be validated. So if you have a spelling error on your well, not stating envelope, but stating envelope, then it won't be validated because it's spelled incorrectly. So mainly I'm just stating what the trigger file issues is we experienced. They were not using version 2, the naming of the trigger file, checking of the trigger file, and some errors on the trigger file. And then most importantly, it's not the envelope from module 1. So that ZA envelope, it's not that one. So trigger file version 2.0. So if I click on this link, I would go to the ECTD website, and on the opening page there is a new version of the XML file template that should be used as a formula error on first version was corrected. Please download the latest version for use when you compile the trigger file, and if you click there, it actually downloads it for you from this space. If not, you'll see it's downloading there. If not, you can just scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there it says XML trigger file instructions, SAHPRA ZA envelope.xml form. So please use version 2 of the trigger file. The naming of the trigger file. So first of all, we had a situation where there was a ZA-envelope-sequence number. It should be. We also had sequence number -envelope.xml.xml. We also had something called envelope. So you can all see that there are quite mistakes on this envelope naming of the trigger files. And this is what it should look like. It should be sequence-envelope.xml. And please, there is an instruction manual associated with the trigger file, the XL. Please go read that. It clearly states how to save it and to make sure you have the trigger file in the correct format as well. So please check your own trigger file. Ensure the information is correct. For example, your application numbers, email addresses, and submission types. If your submission type is wrong, it won't go to the correct unit because the submission type actually states it's going to quality or clinical and etc. So just on checking your trigger file, I'm going to show you a very nice way to check it. I am using Notepad++. You can download it from the internet. If it's in the correct format, the XML, this is how we will check if it's valid. We are literally just going to click on each line and make sure it highlights in purple. So if something is not highlighting purple, I'll show you what it would look like, then it means it's not, there's something wrong. So I'm just going to literally click, and this is what means by opening and closing statements. So this means it's opening and there's a closing. So you will see it's kind of the same name, there's just that an extra symbol there, but that means, okay, that's opening and that's closing. There's an opening and a closing, an opening and a closing, opening and a closing. And then you can just go through your whole thing and make sure everything has the same. Also with this one, there's my opening and there's my closing, because those are the main elements of the envelope or the trigger file. There's my Z01, there's the opening, and there's the closing, and then you can just go through all of these to check if they're opening and closing. So on that note, I'm just going to delete something quickly, and I'll show you what's happening now is that one didn't highlight purple because the opening statement disappeared. And we've seen that this, especially this line, gets lost during the copy from the Excel sheet. So you should just ensure that you copy or make sure you don't delete any lines. And that would be my best advice for this. So this is how you check a trigger file for validity. There's some errors. So this was a trigger file we received. As all of you can see, that is not a trigger file. I actually don't know how this came to be, but this is not a trigger file. Then there's no version 2, so this will be valid. This will be invalid, and we'll go and receive that invalid trigger file change of name. Then you see the SAHPRA was removed, and that happens quite a lot. The SAHPRA at the top is removed, and it starts with ZA company. That means it's invalid. Then we have a lot of situations where this little word, #ref, appears in the trigger file. Please check your trigger file. If that happens, it means that is invalid. It won't read the trigger file and will fail the validation. So please correct it. Please redo your template and ensure you don't have any special characters which can create this #ref. Then this is where we had an opening statement, and then we don't have the closing. You see if that one was not closed out, so you can see it's submission, but the submission didn't have another submission, and therefore it was not valid. And then just again, the envelope in module 1 is not the trigger file. So if you see this ZA regional, it's not the trigger file, it's the envelope for module 1. So please do create a trigger file using the template provided. And this is not the trigger file. This is the template to create the trigger file. So please do not submit your sequence with this Excel sheet. And this is what your trigger file would look like. Just some ECTD validation errors. So over here, there's actually 2 errors on this one. So the first one, this is validated according to specification 2.1, and there were some mandatory inclusions of documents. So this basically states what it is. An electronic copy declaration must exist in section 1224, and only one should exist in 1224. So that was the first mistake. And obviously, the old naming convention said you could not have a variable part of the naming of the file. This one is very clear. It says a tabulated schedule of amendment must exist in section 1521. This is just a warning, but try and submit as little as possible warnings to SAHPRA. Then there is no hyperlinks in module 1521, so please, the validation rule states that you should have valid hyperlinks to sections in your dossier which you've changed, and this applicant did not include any hyperlinks. Then the recommended file names from the ICH and ZA specifications are used for all files, so it states file names are incorrect. So if we look at the file names, it says Annex 1 Justification RPM, and that should just be pharmaceutical development. So these namings of the files, the PDF files itself, were incorrect. This application form, so it has a few dashes in, which is not acceptable. It has, I think it's only allowed to have one of them, or it's application form 1, 2, 3, 4, and then also this invalid file name that is named incorrectly. That is according to the ICH guidelines. Then sequence number. So what happened? This was actually sequence 0, but the envelope in module 1 stated sequence it's sequence 1. So please ensure that your sequence numbers are correct in your envelope as well as your trigger files. Just to note, the alt validation criteria still states that in the envelope in module 1, a related sequence is none, but in our trigger files, it should be the related sequence, so it should relate to itself. So if sequence 1 was relating to itself, the alt none, then you should state it as 0001, and you don't use the word none in the trigger file. And then this is quite a common issue. And just on this note, it says, when I open this, it says it cannot find the referenced documents. So there is a possibility due to the data migration, the bulk of it, we are through a bulk of it, but it might be that a sequence is still not imported into the bulk, into DocuBridge. So it might be that the files you are referencing is not in DocuBridge yet, but as they come in, we pick them up and we put them into DocuBridge. And that is from me. Don, over to you.
Right. Thanks, Madeleine. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Dawn once again, and thank you for Pratibha, that introduction earlier. My name is Don, short. My slides are going to be very short as well, short like the owner. All right, with the FTP uploads, I'm just going to take you through the do's and don'ts, and with some examples as well. So on the do's and don'ts, with the application within the FTP upload on the server, please do have the structure that you see on the doors, have your XML trigger file and your sequence folder in the same level within your application folder. And then above your application folder, that would be your applicant folder. This is so no sequence folder in a sequence folder in a sequence folder. And we want to see the sequence folder 0000 or whatever with the XML on the same level. And then on the DONs, please do not include the validation report and the signed PDF, MD5, and as I mentioned, the folders within the folders. Thank you, Madi. Right. Now, so here's some examples with the do's. You can see on the left, on the do's, nice and clean, 6 digits for the application numbers on your application folder level. No dashes, no BAUs, no TOAs and reg and none of that. Nice and clean. So this is at the level just after the applicant level. Then from here, the next level that we expect to see is just your sequence and your trigger file. And then on the DONs, you can see fine, we've got the sequence and the working documents, but then you see we have this validation reports and the MD5 checksums on that same level. None of that stuff at the bottom should be on this on this level. All right. Thank you, Maddie. Okay, so following up on the do's, directly after the 6 digits application folder level, within that, then we have the sequence folder plus the envelope trigger file. These are the only things that we are expecting to see within this level. And then on the DONs, again, you can see within the sequence folder, we've got the signed checksum, and you can see even with the naming conventions at the top, we have this 360358 and a long string number there. I'm not sure, this was probably like additional application numbers, the 359 and 369, none of that, and the BAU and all of that. It just makes life very difficult with the automated process. The automated process is not forgiving. If it's almost correct, it doesn't count. It must be correct. Thanks, Maddie. All right. And on the folder structure, again, I've used the same example. Within your application folder, only the sequence folder and only the trigger file envelope. And then on the DONS, you'll see after the application number 451121, we have a 00, and then we have a 0. So it's like a folder within a folder. And so now the automator doesn't know at what level is it going to find what it's actually looking for. Then it just stops. So you have the 000 folder. Within the 00, then you have the 000 folder again. And then we also now have the validation report here as well. That is no longer required. You should keep if and ever, whenever SAHPRA might ask for that. Thank you, Madi. Okay, and then again on the dues with the naming convention, sequence folder, envelope, with the numbers, please do just use the 6 digits, nothing more, nothing less. Please do look out for the ERR folder, because if you have an invalid trigger file or invalid naming conventions anywhere on your folders, that will likely then go into the ERR folder. So before you contact SAHPRA to ask, I haven't received my automated email, what's going on, please be on the lookout for the ERR folder. And then on the DONS, no BAUs with the 600, please don't then put the sequence number there as well. Don't put the TOA stuff, no dashes, sequence, 0001, none of them. All of these, they look very simple, but these are requests that, so they do come to SAHPRA because you are submitting to SAHPRA and not the consultants, but we do then get these on a daily basis. And we then work with SAHPRA in investigating them and then making sure that you as the applicants receive your responses to your queries. So we do see this on a daily basis. Thanks, Madi. All right, and on the dues again, 6 digits. If it's the old ones with the alphabets, it must just be the alphabets and the numbers, no dashes, no slides, no nothing. And on the DONS again, we have another example of the dashes and the BAUs and in brackets, the Vs and then the sequence numbers, none of that. Thank you, Madi. Right, I think this is my last slide again on the naming conventions. Nice and clean 6 digits. You see on the DONS, I'm not even sure what this is. It looks like it's one of those, it's registration numbers, actually. Those in betweens, they look like the farm classes. So these are actually registration numbers, not application numbers. Please, we only using the application numbers, not the registration numbers, and no dashes and all of that. Thank you, everyone. That's all from me.
Hey, thanks, Don. Thanks, Maddie. Just something small from me, just parting before we start with the questions and the answers. There was communication initially, which indicated that the SAHPRA portal would be going live around July. And I have indicated on the 8th of July that there is a delay in the launch of this portal. And what this has done is necessitated an interim measure to be reinstated to support those applicants requiring those implemented variation summaries for Inspectorate Type 1A and Type 1A notification changes for use by Port Health, as well as an addendum to the current registration certificate. Now, this does involve the submission of the ECTD variation application via the FTP, as indicated by both Madeleine and Don. Thereafter, the upload of the proof of submission, proof of payment, application letter, and the pass validation for the relevant sequence onto the DVP. The evaluation of quality and inspected variations of the type B to B1B and B to B1E to F must also follow this route post the approval by the quality unit. Now, I've been monitoring the DVP, and I'm seeing that this has been quite well received by industry, as there have been a number of uploads on the DVP since this communication came out. So I think now we'll revert to some of the questions. I'm going to hand over to Shital to read them out, and then Maddie and Don, I'd really appreciate some assistance here.
Good morning, everyone. So, a question from I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but please excuse me for that. Then Clavo, the previous trigger file error happens if you copy onto an app called XML Notepad instead of the Notepad app or Notepad++.
Can we just repeat again?
The previous trigger file error happens if you copy onto an app called XML Notepad instead of the Notepad app or Notepad++.
Okay, sorry, I'm not familiar with the app XML. So we recommended to use only Notepad, which is an app that you would be available on your desktop, and then you just save it as an XML. And maybe I should just show you what you should do if you have a Notepad. Let me just share my screen quickly. So you don't have to use intricate, I would say, types of apps. You can just use Notepad on your PC. So this is probably Notepad. So you would go File, Save As, and then you will change this to all files, and you just type your sequence number -envelope.xml, just like that, and you save it, and then it will be a XML. So I would recommend please do not use any other apps. You can use Notepad++ or Notepad only, which is available on your PC. Next question.
Thanks, Maddie.
Next question from Nazir. Revised application folder naming should be followed for baselines also. How about existing applications with folder name 12345-6 question?
So on SAHPRA side, we removed all those application folders with the dashes, so you can submit it only with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So next question.
And the next question we have from Shilpa. The title in specification is one text, and in element it's with another text. For example, different 1.0 correspondence M1-0- application -letter.
Is that on a new specification or the old specification?
It's not mentioned.
We can come back to this one, Maddie. We'll move on.
Okay.
The next question is from Dale. Just 1 second.
Just 1 second. The question and answers are disappearing off the screen. There we go, Dale.
The next question is from Dale. For file naming convention for FTP, my product reg number is T738, less than 6 characters.
That's fine.
That's acceptable.
Yeah, that's fine. It's
Yeah.
one of the examples that I showed earlier with where you have the alphabets. So that's perfectly fine, as long as you don't put any additional numbering after that, because previously the application number wasn't a 6-digit. We did have the numbers and they were much shorter.
Noted. The next question from Dale is, please clarify the naming convention for the 1-to-1 when submitting multiple strands.
Please refer, you can refer to the current specification 2.1. It's stated there how you should submit those file naming conventions. As far as I remember, it's usually with just one variable and not several dashes afterwards. So you can have -1, -2, -3, or -100 milligram or -200 milligram, but you can't have -100 milligram -name or something like that.
Yeah, this is on the ECTD specifications. It's within your sequence.
Okay, the next question is from Michelle Hardwick. When are we resubmitting a variation which has already been reviewed as we receive questions? As it has already been reviewed, do we need to hyperlink, i.e. sequence 000 equal baseline, comma 0001 is resubmission of a variation, and sequence 0002 equal response to queries raised? Do you have to hyperlink sequence 0001?
Sorry, do pose that question. I just want to, I'm just looking for that question.
So, Michelle's asking for a resubmission of a variation that's already been reviewed and we've received a round of queries. As it's been reviewed, do you need to hyperlink again? Sequence tetra 0, baseline, 0001 resubmission of variation, and 0002 response to queries raised. So do you need to hyperlink sequence triple? And it's a no, yes.
No, it's a no. Yeah, it's already been evaluated. Remember, hyperlinks is for the purpose of the evaluator for ease of evaluating. So you don't have to, if something was already approved, you don't have to hyperlink again.
From Dunja Markulek. I have a question regarding the 3.2.R.8 node extension type. In the M1 guide, it is declared that only 3.2.R.8 other is a valid title, but in validation criteria and in document matrix, 3.2.R.8 score, comma, QIS and QOS are present alongside other sections. Are they also valid titles?
Yes, there are also valid titles. I'm just thinking in this case, the Module 1 guide might be the old Module 1 guide. And you will see we have the new specification 3.1, and it doesn't speak to that old Module 1 guide because a lot of the Module 1 elements are discussed in this new specification guide. But yes, you can still name it score QIS, QIS.
Next question is from Charlie. For all medicines, there is not to be 6 digits for the application number. How do we name application for old medicines?
You answered that one.
Okay, answered already. Anonymous.
The next question is from an anonymous. If an A precedes the current registration number, example, A 123456, comma, should we include the A in the root folder naming?
Yeah, that's fine also.
Yes, if you previously done it like that, then you should continue to submit it like that. Please do not start doing it from now on. If you have done it like that, we stick to the A's, but if you haven't, please don't start doing it.
The next question is from Anita Small. Please confirm if ZA ECTD version 3.0 will be implemented and used for submissions and replaced by version 3.1 at the later stage, or will version 3.1 replace 3.0 for implementation?
No. So from 1st October, we're going directly to 3.1.
Okay, that is answered. Sorry, just before we move on, I see that there's some hands raised. If you recall, the microphone is switched off. Can you please add your questions to the Q&A? Thank you.
The next question is from Shilpa. Can you please clarify how the life cycles in the old version is indicated in the XML of new version for redefined elements?
Life cycle is the same. Whether it's so, I'm not sure with this answer. If it's the XML trigger file, it'll be at the top of the XML Excel. But if this has to do with the ECT lifecycle, that remains the same.
Yeah,
It's gonna be new.
Yeah, it's new, replace, delete. So you still have those lifecycle functions in your new. So there is a specific part that speaks to, for instance, the 1.31551 move to 133. So if you read the specification 3.1, it is a way that you can handle these that was in an old place previously. It's a matter of having a delete in a sequence and having a new in the new sequences. So please, you can just refer to that, and we might have an example done Pratibha on the next session, the webinar, to speak specifically to those that changed the life cycle of the old to the new.
Next question is from Anna. Will SAHPRA accept submissions with some BP's invalidation report?
Yes, they will, but when they become a habit, because now in the back end, we are able to see if there's a habit that's forming with a particular applicant where all your submissions are coming in with best practices. So if that becomes a habit, SAHPRA will start rejecting your sequences.
Next question is from Helen. You say we must include the complete trigger file from SAHPRA instead of from CIPC. This is contrary to the instruction at the top of the template. The instruction says we must exclude first line, which is the SAHPRA trigger file version equal to 2. Kindly explain.
Okay, I will speak to that one. So it says to copy the complete blue section. I just quickly want to share my screen when the Excel opens. So just give me a second. So if you read, let me just open the right screen. Is it this one? Yes. So it says copy entire contents of column L below, excluding row 1. So this in an Excel sheet is considered row 1, not that. That's row 2. That's row 1. And copy entire contents below, excluding row 1. So in Excel, that is row 1. So please do not copy that. That is also one of the errors we got on some of the trigger files. They copied this whole L. That's why we included that, excluding row 1.
The next question is from Anonymous. From a pre-registration response to a clinical recommendation, for example, sequence 3, is the related sequence on the trigger file sequence 3, why is this different in the envelope?
So the trigger file is already written according to the spec 3.1. However, the envelope in module 1 still speaks to specification 2.1, and that will change from October onwards. Then your envelope and your trigger file will be the same. From October, when the portal is live, you won't have to do the trigger file as well. It's just until the portal goes live. So for now, they are different, but just because they speak to different specifications as this time, because of the overlaps or the going over to the new spec, there was some adjustments or compromises we had to make.
Question is from Enrich. Related to the new draft specification 3.1, when SAHPRA planned to mandate new specification usage, is it expected to become mandatory as initially planned ECTD version 3, mandatory usage deadline October?
We've already answered this one. So from 1st October, 3.1 is mandatory.
The next question is from Esther. Are we still required to submit the working documents?
Yes.
Esther, yes.
The next question is from Kathy. Just confirming if a trigger file needed for APIMF FTP uploads.
Okay, so with the trigger files, we've implemented with this initial phase for orthodox and biological. For all other application or submission types like APIMFs and the other sectors eventually when they come on board, like the veterinaries and medical devices, you will not have to create a trigger file because at that point, the portal will be creating the trigger files. So for now, the trigger files you as the applicant are creating because the portal is not live yet. When the portal goes live, it will be creating the trigger files. And hopefully all the APIMFs and all these other submission types, they will only come into DB when the portal has gone live. We do not want to go through this experience of the trigger files again with the rest of the submission types.
Thanks.
The next question is from Shelpa. Can you please advise how the lifecycle operations are managed in version 3/version 3.1 when there are new elements compared with version 2.1?
Same. We've answered this. The life cycles are still new, replace, delete. There's no change on the life cycle operations on that.
The next question is from Serban. What is the exact expected procedure of updating application from ECTD 2.1 to 3.0 and later to 3.1, considering the changes in granularity like 1.0 or 1.3.1.2 section? Should be life cycle history kept or ignored? If kept, which operation can be used?
So just on this,
Okay.
the 1312 is the standard references. They are still in the exact same spot, so they should have a replace value. In the life cycle, the changes are basically the 1551, where your PI, PILs, the annotated ones, they move to the 13, and that is clearly indicated in 3.1 how you can do those life cycle operations. So please refer to the spec 3.1 for that.
Next question is from Darren. Please confirm if SAHPRA will update the guideline 2.24 guidance of the submission of the SACT and ECTD General and Module 1 and regional information in line with the updated ECTD specifications. If so, will this and other guidelines be released for comment well in advance?
Madeleine, I'll take this. Yes,
Yes.
SAHPRA is actually busy with updating all of our guidelines. And yes, we will be sending it out in time for comment to industry. I will not confirm the time for that in this webinar.
The next question is from Reshma. Please explain once more or where the working folder should be included. Normally it appears in the main outer folder.
I'll just share my screen quickly. I'm just going back to a slide. So you would see I have my main folder, my main application folder. I have my sequence working documents, another sequence, and my trigger files. So that is where you would put your working documents. So it's in the main folder, but outside of your sequence, it has its own sequence folder.
Okay, thanks, Maddie. I just need to say that we have 5 minutes to go. We'll take 1 or 2 more questions.
The next question is from Equity. For inspected changes submitted only on FTP from April to today, do we now need to submit on the DVP retrospectively?
Okay, I can take that one. So just for equity, if you require a variation summary for the purpose of your port health release, as well as an addendum to your registration certificate, then for all your type 1A and type 1A notification, as well as your quality and inspected combined variations of type 1B, post the quality unit approval, yes, you will need to submit on the DVP in order to obtain that supporting data to support your business needs. Next.
The next question is from Yanni. Janine, sorry. Will updated templates for 1.83 reg and post-reg P provided in line with RIMS?
There should be, yes.
I think
Thank
what
you.
is just on that note, maybe Pratibha, on the portal is very smart and it's going to be very nice. So we are super excited about that, and that speaks to a lot of some of the validation criteria as well. So it's going to ask you some questions. Did you include this and that, and where's this, and what you're doing with that? So yes, it would probably need to be updated because some of the questions will already be asked in a portal or something like that.
Okay, the next question is from Sima. Please advise when will version 3.1 be expected to go live since 3.0 is October?
So we're going straight to 3.1 in October. Last question.
The last question is from Shilpa. As per validation criteria 3.4.12 and naming convention is in specifications are conflicting. Can you please suggest the right naming convention for section 3.2R3?
You can make a comment on the specification. So please send there's an Excel sheet you can complete to make comments on the specification 3.1. So that will be a great way to communicate that back, that we can investigate what is going on there.
Thanks, Madeleine. Thanks, John. Thanks, Shital. I think we have come to the end of our webinar. And thank you for all the questions. And those that haven't been answered, we will respond to these in the Q&A. I just would like to say that we will be hosting a series of webinars on the Reg Information Management System. We're hoping to have a webinar every 3 weeks, and we do have one scheduled for the 8th of August 2024. So we hope to have as many attendees on that presentation as well, or that webinar as well, where we will be taking you through the process changes. So thank you for your attendance today, and have a good day further. Thank you. Bye.